Okay, good evening. Tonight is the Select Board meeting, and we are having a hearing tonight on Mr. Perkins and Mr. Buckley. But before we do that, we are going to join one another in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So we are, first up on our agenda is a hearing for Mr. Perkins. And just to, how did we get here? This is in August of 2021, the Hanson Select Board received a citizen's petition compelling the Select Board to place an article in the October 2021 special town meeting to investigate allegations of potential conflicts of interest between and amongst the Zoning Board of Appeals members. That petition was signed by 150 registered Hanson voters. In October, the article requesting an investigation passed unanimously with 130 Hanson voters in attendance and without any controversy. At the Select Board meeting held on October 19th, immediately following the October 2021 special town meeting, all of the Select Board members, Matt Dyer, Kenny Mitchell, Jim Hickey, Joe Weeks, and I, voted to move forward with hiring someone to conduct the investigation. In late November, the board engaged an individual to conduct the investigation. The investigator was provided all of the complaints and allegations the Select Board had received to date, and our town administrator was appointed as the point person for the contact information and document requests. And we received the final report in our open session of October 11th, 2022. The board received copies of it the following day, and then the report was made available to the ZBA members and the public on the following Monday. October 17th. And on November 1st, the Select Board met in open session to have a general discussion about the ZBA investigation. And after discussing the executive summary provided by the investigator, the majority of the board voted to hold a hearing on the two sitting Zoning Board of Appeals members who the investigator cited as having potential disclosure issues under the conflict of interest laws. Our job tonight is to hold the hearings on these two individuals and to determine if, as a result of what is discussed tonight, whether those two individuals should still remain on the Zoning Board of Appeals. As we proceed into the hearings, I want to make sure that the rules of engagement are clear so that we do not have any issues. All questions to anyone involved in the hearing, including the Select Board, the Town Administrator, Town Council, and subjects of the hearing, should go through me as the chair. And while I understand that there is a lot of pent-up emotion around this subject, we are only posted to talk about the findings of the investigation and the other reasons for the hearings that are listed in each individual's letters. And we will be sticking to that subject. We will open it up to the public for statements if people, pro or con, if people want to make statements. I would just ask that people not repeat what somebody before them might have said, just for the sake of brevity. So with that, the hearing for Mr. Perkins will take place in open session to consider whether Mr. Perkins should be removed as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the following reasons: unprofessional conduct, failure to disclose, failure to cooperate with the investigatory process. Mr. Perkins requested that this session be held in open session. So with that, I think we will turn it over to Mr. Sims. I believe you're representing Mr. Perkins.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the board. I think we should begin by having the allegations read in open session and any supporting evidence presented so that we may adequately offer some opposition and other information that we feel is appropriate. So,
Okay. So I will simply read from the letter that Mr. Perkins received and you received. So you are hereby notified on November 10th at 6 p.m. The Hanson Select Board is holding a hearing, an executive session, which, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Perkins waived, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than the professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, and individual. The reasons are as follows. Tuesday, September 27th, 2022, unprofessional conduct. You were heard by meeting attendees and the Select Board members using profanity during the Select Board meeting. Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, unprofessional conduct. After the Select Board voted to appoint Mr. Cushing and Mr. Prati to a temporary term to end September 1st, 2022, you behaved in a disrespectful manner and used contentious language when leaving the Select Board meeting. Failure to disclose. Attorney Lampke, James Lampke, was hired by the Select Board to conduct an investigation of the Zoning Board of Appeals members with focus on conflict of interest and financial disclosures. The report concludes that you failed to file a disclosure of your business relationship with Mr. Ed Johnson. Failure to cooperate with the investigation process. Attorney James Lampke was hired by the Select Board to conduct an investigation of the Zoning Board of Appeals members with focus on conflict of interest and financial disclosures. The report notes that you refused to meet with the investigator and therefore did not cooperate with the investigation process. The Zoning Board of Appeals is primarily public-facing, requiring interaction with the public and public officials. Professionalism is a critical component of members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and as a public official, the breaches in question deviated substantially, publicly, and overtly from the expectations of a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So is that responsive to what you were looking for?
well, let's start with this. I requested a unredacted videotape recording of 2 of the Select Board meetings. I didn't get that. I got an edited version, which was available online to anybody in the public.
I think you also, Mr. Sims, got a note from our office, and Mr. Perkins has gotten this as well. We do not tape those meetings. That is Whitman Hanson Cable. They are a separate entity, and we've got no control over that.
Okay, so I will share with you that we filed a public information request with the cable company for the unredacted version. We have not received that yet. So we are not fully prepared to address everything tonight. We'll do our best. But we think there was a lot of information presented by this board in public, which was not available for me to review and for the public to comment on. So we'll start with that. The minute meetings that I received just yesterday, so 24 hours before this hearing, are not approved minutes. They're draft. They have not been voted upon. So again, we're dealing with information that is incomplete and unavailable to me to adequately respond. If they were complete minutes, different story. Other than that, you're talking about allegations that are not specific. I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about allegations of unprofessional behavior without specificity. If you want to stand up and have everybody hear exactly what the witnesses or somebody has to say about his unprofessional conduct, because we're talking about for an cause here, okay? If you want to dismiss a member from the zoning board, you need cause. And I want to hear exactly what that cause is with specificity, not just some generalities about unprofessional behavior.
We're prepared with that. We have clips from the videos, Ms. Green. If you could show those, that would be great.
Sure.
That if we appoint for the full term, then we have to have a hearing for Mr. Cushing and Mr. Pryor. You can ignore, you can please leave, Mr. Perkins. You can leave. There's no need for that. You can leave.
And if you're wondering what he said, the entire board heard him say BS.
Okay, play it again, I can't hear it.
Because they have to blurb it out for FCC purposes. They can't.
You can't put it on
They
there.
can't put it on there. But you've got 5 witnesses here that heard him say it.
Okay. it sounded very muffled to me. If it's not on, so that's why I wanted the unredacted version. So that
Again, take that up with Whitman Hanson Cable,
we
sir.
will,
Yeah.
because this doesn't show me anything. This shows me a muffled sound, which you all allege, where he says a word of profanity, and that is your basis for cause. Okay, so we will get the unredacted version at some point, and if we hear that, maybe there's some basis, maybe there's not. But okay, we'll start with that.
Okay. Ms. Green,
What
I
else
think
do you have?
I think you had a second.
And all opposed.
I would like to point out that we could have a continuation here in the past.
Totally recognize that. I honestly think this is just buying us time to get that.
How long are we going to take a hand out very well?
Okay, Mr. Perkins. Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks.
And can you explain to me what that's all about?
Perhaps your client could explain what that's all
No,
about,
so he
sir.
walked out of a meeting. He was upset with whatever was going on here, apparently. But what did he say that was unprofessional, improper?
His conduct towards, we are the appointing authority for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and his conduct consistently at our meetings has been disrespectful. And those were just a couple of examples. There's been, in fact, our last meeting, not the last meeting, but the meeting just prior to that, he did the same thing, walked out, was making comments on the way out.
Is he not a public citizen when he's attending these meetings? He is. He's a public citizen. And granted, he's an appointed member of the Zoning Board of Appeals in this town, but he's sitting there not as a zoning board member, but as a public citizen like anybody else. So how far do we take this, okay? If somebody sees him at a sporting event using profanity, is that unprofessional conduct? I mean, really, people, we gotta...
We're talking about his conduct towards his
Okay.
appointing authority.
We're not talking about a
We're not talking about a ball game or anything
Okay,
else.
but I'm just saying, like, he's sitting here as a public citizen watching a selectmen's meeting. Granted, he is a member of the zoning board, okay, but he is here as a citizen, not in his capacity as zoning board member. So let's be careful here exactly what he's doing. I understand the standards of conduct for people appointed in this town, like any town. But this was Mr. Perkins sitting here and listening to the board and commenting on the actions of the board as a citizen like anybody else.
We haven't had anybody else speak to us that way, sir. Nobody. We have not. In the 5 years that I have been on this board, we have not had
I didn't
anybody.
hear anything that was particularly offensive in that particular comment, so I can't wait for the transcript from that. So, are those two incidents the basis of the cause? This is the reasonable cause for your
Those are,
action tonight?
that's the unprofessional conduct,
Okay.
and we've got other charges, as we read.
Let's go.
Okay, and then failure to disclose. Attorney James Lamke was hired by the Select Board to conduct an investigation of the Zoning Board of Appeals with the focus on conflict of interest. The report concludes that you failed to file a disclosure of your business relationship with Mr. Johnson. And it should be noted that Mr. Johnson does come before, in various forms, because he has different companies, comes before the Zoning Board of Appeals on a fairly frequent basis.
So, I'm told by Mr. Perkins that he has filed multiple disclosures over the years.
We have one disclosure on file.
Are we sure that things that have been filed have not been misfiled, misplaced?
We had a situation over the summer where the Ethics Commission was looking into some allegations that had been made about Mr. Perkins, and they had called our town clerk and they had requested disclosures. Our town clerk was unable to find the disclosure. She later was able to find it. She had misfiled it, and she went on the record. She apologized profusely to Mr. Perkins. She apologized to our board, and she publicly came to our meeting. She's also written a letter indicating that she had misfiled it but located it. We only have one disclosure that was on file. It was filed on 7/1, and that's all we have.
Okay, so I'll just simply say that I can't say anything other than the fact that Mr. Perkins has advised me he has filed multiple disclosures over the years, and the fact that one got mysteriously lost and then magically reappeared, it's pretty clear evidence to me there's something going on that is inappropriate. Okay, I don't know exactly what it is, but it reappeared. We got apologies from public officials and town employees. So I think that maybe the investigation should focus a little bit more on what's going on in town hall here and where the disclosures are.
That is not what we're posted to
I understand,
discuss,
but
sir.
I'm telling you that this, Mr. Perkins has copies of a lot of documents that have been filed, and he has filed disclosures in every matter where there's a potential conflict of interest.
We would certainly like to see the additional disclosures that Mr. Perkins has filed.
Okay, well-
Because we have not been provided anything other than the one that the town clerk misfiled.
So I'll let Mr. Perkins address.
Yeah, so this is what I had prepared for my response to number 3. I filed multiple disclosures over the time I've been on the ZBA. In these years I have served there, there's been at least 4 town administrators, at least 3 administrative assistants, and various turnovers of select board members. During this period of time, I have received conflicting information regarding disclosures as to who I submit them to and who retains them. Depending on the powers to be and the guidance I received at the time I submitted disclosures, they went to the selectman's office or the clerk's office. Town hall security was previously an issue and was discussed at the selectman meeting on March 15, 2022. There was discussion with the building being left unsecure found wide open the next morning. There was discussion of a key fob belonging to Mr. Joe Weeks being used by unknown people and unauthorized personnel. There was discussion of unknown people being in the town hall after hours alone with no accountability. Within 2 days of this meeting on March 17, 2022, I was contacted by the State Ethics Commission because they were unable to locate any disclosures within the town hall. Not a single disclosure filed by me. I in turn had to produce an original disclosure relating to the Cushing Trails project that the state investigator was specifically in search of. I then sent the same copy to the clerk. This did not reappear in the town hall. That particular disclosure circled back through me producing an original to the town clerk and to the select board office. It was not located. It was not found. They found it in their email when I sent it to them. Is it coincidence that this event took place within just 2 days of town hall security being discussed? Possibly. The Ethics Commission furthermore determined that no further action was required on my part concerning my private business relationship with Mr. Cushing, which I had correctly disclosed at the point it became relevant. I cannot comment on where my disclosures went, but I can comment that multiple disclosures were filed by me at the appropriate times when facts came forth in a certain situation where it was relevant to me to file a disclosure in order to serve in my position as a ZBA member. That's relative to both Mr. Johnson and Mr. Cushing.
So are you saying that you did file a
I'm saying that I
disclosure?
have filed disclosures relative to those 2 individuals.
And
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
have copies of those?
I will look to see if I can locate copies, but I've moved twice since then, so I'll see what I can do. But I can assure you that I've filed multiple disclosures. That's all I can say.
All we can rely on is what the town clerk is telling us she
And all I can
has.
rely on is that there's a lot of issues in this town hall. So you do with what you may with the information.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I just,
Yes, please.
there also, if other disclosures were filed, they would have been referenced during the ZBA meetings, so perhaps Mr. Perkins can go back to the ZBA minutes and for the dates.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay. And then failure to cooperate with the investigation process. Attorney James Lamke was hired by the Select Board to conduct an investigation of the Zoning Board of Appeals with the focus on the conflict of interest and financial disclosures. The report notes that you refused to meet with the investigator and therefore did not cooperate with the investigation process.
So the call was placed by Mr. Lamke to Mr. Perkins and through our office and asked, do you want to participate in an interview? We said no. That's all. We said no. We don't want to participate in an interview. There may have been issues that were of personal nature, but whatever reason, he didn't feel that it was necessary. I believe that if it was escalated to the point where there's a subpoena power issue, then we would have obviously complied. But as a question posed to Mr. Perkins, do you want to be interviewed? No, I don't. I don't want to be interviewed. I don't feel that that particular response is anything other than what anybody has. You got A or B, yes or no. Do you want to be interviewed? Yes, no. He said no. So am I in trouble if I say no? Yeah, he says no. Well, I'm asking everybody if they want to be interviewed. That's the extent of it.
Okay.
When was that phone call made?
What date?
Yeah.
You're really challenging my memory now, Mr. Weeks, I'm sorry, but I'd have to go back to the file and find out, unless...
You can take your time if you want to.
You might.
Take your time.
I'm not sure on the phone call.
I don't have it with me, so...
I will say this.
You're here for hearing. You're going to bring it up. You're going to bring it up for evidence. You better have your dates ready.
So when the selectmen chose to hire Mr. Lampe to investigate the ZBA, at the time, they all had concerns of doing the investigation correctly. They wanted that process to go correctly. Ms. Kemet had even expressed a concern of tainting of the pot, I believe you had mentioned. So out of respect to this, I chose not to speak to Mr. Lampe because I felt it was in everyone's best interest for Mr. Lampe to get his information from public documents and facts. Not for me to interject my personal opinion, which I think we all know what it is. So I didn't think that was really a good approach to take, so I thought, let's leave it alone. Let's let him get his facts from everywhere else. Public documents, talking to anyone else, and then he can write his report like he did. He didn't need my help to write the report for him. He did it all on his own. So, I was appointed to the ZBA in May of 2018 when I fully disclosed my profession of being an electrical contractor, a builder, and a developer. From that day forward, through the COVID-19 pandemic, through the uncomfortable Cushing Trails hearings, through the ZBA investigation signs, through the Facebook posts, through the town hall gossip, through the ZBA investigation, through these allegations, and right up to present day, I have stayed committed, I have had great attendance, I have not resigned, and I have always acted in the best interest of the town of Hanson. There were many opportunities where I could have resigned, walked away, left a mess behind that the town would have had exposure to liability. I stuck it out, I did what was right, I did what was ethical, I did what the town of Hanson needed, and that was to reduce their legal liability from pending applications. So to question my dedication and commitment levels and making accusations of classifying me as an uncooperative employee, I completely disagree with.
Okay. Did anybody have any positive things that they wanted to say? If so, you can, well, we'll have to get the podium out of the wedge that it's in now, but did anybody want to say anything? Mr. Question? Please state your name and your address, and that's for everybody, please.
William Cushing, 236 Lakeside Road. I was the chairman of the ZBA for several years and also a member since 2015, and I know that you had mentioned, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Jane Friedman.
Jane. I know she had mentioned in regards to being in the minutes, but my common practice in my situation, when I had something that I had a interest in, potentially in front of the board, I just simply did not show up and recused. That's the advice that I got from town council, and that's kind of how we proceeded. We didn't actually ever say on the record, we never went to the meeting, so we never had the opportunity to put anything on the record. Just for further clarification in regards to your comment.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Freedom. Yeah.
Okay. In this particular issue, it was regarding when someone did sit in on a hearing, and the issue in the report that was raised was the perception of a conflict because a member may have sat in on a hearing that they may have had a business relationship with somebody. So in that case, it wasn't the same situation as you just described. So in that situation, if someone had a business relationship with someone, what the report indicates is that a disclosure should have been made if there was no conflict, if the person felt that they could hear the matter without a conflict. So in that case, it would have been read into the record because the person would have preceded the hearing the case.
Well, what I was
So
just...
that was when I made the suggestion.
So let's go back to Mr. Perkins in particular. So what I was saying was, let's put the comprehensive permit specifically, right, because there were disclosures filed on that, and that seems to be the disclosures that were provided. So specifically on that, I'm not aware, I watched the meetings, they were recorded, that anybody ever disclosed on the record what they disclosed. So what I'm saying is, I don't think it was ever done, and you're never going to find it in the meeting minutes. They were disclosed to the clerk's office or an appointing authority, but that's not something that was verbally said on the record, because again, none of us are attorneys, and we do the best we can to understand the conflict of interest laws, and that's just the way we were taught to do it. If we were taught a different way, we may have done that. And I think the best thing at the end of the day for all this is further education with all appointed authorities.
Oh, we will be doing that,
I really
yes.
think it's important,
Yeah.
because a lot of times, like, you find someone listening to this crutch right now, it's like, oh, I didn't know. You know what I mean? And really, and that's what it comes down to. I did the best I could when I was on the board to the best I could. You know, and sometimes I feel like this all transpired from a certain situation, and then disclosures became an issue. And then at that point in time, everybody was like, disclosure this, disclosure that, which is fairly after COVID, it was recently. So what we try to do is be more cognitive of that in the future. But preceding that, I would say that that's just the way we were taught. I mean, I can't say more than that. I'm sorry.
And Mr. Cushing, we will most definitely be doing additional education and awareness and the like. There were several recommendations that Mr. Lamke made in there that were not specific to individuals, they were general, and we definitely will be going through those.
Madam Chair, if there was some.
Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to say? Mr. Sims.
Just a couple things. Do we have a particular zoning case in which Mr. Perkins has not disclosed a conflict of interest, or is alleged that he had a conflict of interest? Because I haven't read that. Is this just general?
Well, I think according to the, Ms. Friedman, I think it was you that was mentioning this.
On page 39 of Mr. Lamke's report, he indicates that Mr. Cushing and Mr. Perkins should file a disclosure relative to any business they've had in the past with each other. Doing so will inform the select board what their appointees are doing, and would also provide protection to them, as the filing of the disclosure dispels the appearance of the conflict. And then on page 59, restriction imposed by Section 19 under Section 23B, even if this is regarding Mr. Johnson, even if they were no longer in business with each other, depending on the time periods, a reasonable person could conclude that Mr. Perkins was unduly influenced by his prior dealings with Mr. Johnson, and thus Mr. Perkins would be precluded from participating as a ZBA member on any such property. However, as discussed elsewhere in this report, if appropriate, Mr. Perkins would normally be able to make the disclosure provided for in 23B3 to participate. And I believe in the report it lists some of the projects that
So it sounds to me like those are sort of general comments. There's nothing specific about any particular project.
Well,
That's the way I hear it.
Well, to be clear, so in November of, I believe it was 2020, Mr. Perkins did electrical work for the Elizabeth Brown Trust at 143 Woodbine Ave. And then in July 1st, that's according to the electrical permits that are on file at
What is that
town.
project? I'm sorry.
It was an electrical, he did electrical work at 143 Woodbine Ave, which was a property owned by the Elizabeth Brown Trust.
Which is
Well, I'm getting to that. The Elizabeth Brown Trust was also initially the applicant for the 40B that was on Spring Street. It changed back and forth between Cushing Trails and Elizabeth Brown Trust. And Mr. Cushing, Mr. Perkins, on the one disclosure that we do have that was the one in dispute with ethics, actually was Mr. Perkins stating that he had no conflict, he had nothing to do with the applicant, et cetera, et cetera. And then we had almost a year of hearings for the Elizabeth Brown Trust. Again, it went back and forth between Cushing Trails and various other entities. And there was no disclosure. In fact, Mr. Perkins' disclosure was, I don't have anything to disclose about a relationship with Elizabeth Brown Trust, who was the applicant at the time.
So was this the disclosure that we're referring to, Madam Chairman?
If it's signed, yeah, that's the one, yep.
All right, well.
And if you read his I'm sorry, Attorney Sims, could I have that back for just one moment? Thank you. And in the box that says additional facts, I do not have any beneficial interest in the application nor the applicant. There is no conflict of interest. I can with certainty serve my role as approving authority and stay impartial while making decisions. That was an opportunity to say, I might have worked for the Elizabeth Brown Trust, done work for the Elizabeth Brown Trust, but I feel that I could be impartial, but that was not the statement that was made in that disclosure.
Well, it sounds to me like Mr. Perkins filed the disclosure, had a full opportunity to say if he had a conflict or felt that he had a conflict.
Exactly.
Apparently, he did not.
He did not.
He had done work prior, but was not involved with them at present time when this application for the 40B project was presented to the board. So,
Again, under 23B, Mr. Sims, I would say that an average person would assume that if somebody had done work for an entity, that it would be difficult for them to be impartial overseeing a hearing that had to do with that same entity.
well, we can argue over subjective interpretations of that and whether or not it's in your opinion or my opinion or anybody else's opinion, whether or not there'd be a conflict. I've had clients who I've done work for in years past, who I no longer work for, and I have no problem representing an interest against them unless it is, something that was provided to me in confidence as an attorney. And I think my level or my standard is far higher than that of an electrician doing work and as a zoning board member. So if Mr. Perkins was at the point in time where he felt that the work he had done years before...
It was 6 months prior, sir.
6 months before, whatever it is, okay, was not something that he felt would present a conflict. He went to the extent of filing this and could have easily said, yeah, I've got a problem with this, but he did not. He felt that he did not have a problem. So he told you, okay, here it is. If you want to go investigate it, but you didn't. So he disclosed it, sat on the case, done, okay? Secondly, and lastly,
I'm sorry, Mr. Sims, I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Are you suggesting that when somebody files a disclosure that it's our responsibility to investigate that disclosure?
no, I'm not suggesting it at all. I'm saying there's an opportunity available to, and now that we're doing revisionist history here and saying, oh, maybe we should have looked into this a little bit deeper, he disclosed what he felt was necessary and appropriate under the circumstances. Okay, he understood he had a relationship in the past with this particular applicant, but no longer had a relationship with him and felt he could sit impartially on the case. And now we are, I don't know, how many months after, now we're going back and saying, oh, you should have...
But Mr. Sims, he actually didn't say I had a relationship and I think I can act impartially. He said he had no relationship in that disclosure.
At that particular time, he had no relationship. It had ceased. That's...
It's not what you said. So,
You want to clarify? Oh, did I get my disclosure to you?
Nope, I gave it back to you.
You did?
Yep.
Okay, so it's in my...
I have a question
I've got, yes, if you,
Quick question.
if you can stand, state your name and your address.
Cohen, 183 Spring Street. When the disclosure was filed, did Mr. Perkins sit on the board prior to that making any decisions about Cushing Hills, or was it filed?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
So he filed a disclosure in, you said July?
Yes, July 1st. Well, it's dated 6/30, but I think it was
Okay.
received July 1st, yeah.
The Cushing Trails project was withdrawn trust. Didn't that start at the beginning of the year? Is there any meetings prior to that?
Would have to look in the, according to the report, the relevant dates on page 11 of the report would be, there were hearings 6/14, 7/6/21, 8/31/21, 11/9/21, 12/14/21, and 12/28/21. So if you're asking, were there any hearings before he filed it, there would have been one, 6/14.
Just,
Yes, Mr.
just
Perkins.
to the disclosure that's right here in front of me that I'm reading. So it says, describe the issue that's coming before you. It says, I wrote, the ZBA chairman is recusing from the meeting on a comprehensive permit application where he may or may not have a beneficial interest in. That's what I wrote. That's what I know, that the issue became relevant at that point when it was expressed that Mr. Cushing was going to recuse himself. Nobody really knows. They didn't know. Did he have a beneficial interest or didn't he? I don't know. I thought it was a good idea to say, he may or may not, so I'm going to file a disclosure. It might explain your relationship. I have a working relationship in relation to serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals and not a personal relationship, which I still do not have a personal relationship with Mr. Cushing.
Well, I mean, we that's beyond, like,
But
you know.
I'm just saying that
yeah.
this was done, and as Mr. Cushing had stated, we're not attorneys. We do the best we can. I drive a pickup truck. I work with my hands for a living. I've done the best I could do to try to accomplish and satisfy you, and apparently that's not good enough.
This isn't whether you're satisfying us. We're working off of the investigation that was done, and the investigator was calling out, that there were failures to disclose. Mr. Weeks, were you signaling, or?
Oh, I'm
Did
still
you have a
waiting for my
question?
answer on when that phone call was made.
Well, I
I'm not
think,
going to give up on that one. I want to know, because the reason why is because it's very plain and simple. In the report, it says that there was no cooperation, and I want to know how long that non-cooperation was happening, because as a citizen, if you want to say that, we've had many, many derailed Board of Selectmen meetings in which ground rules were laid, in which we were not going to talk about certain things, and it kept happening. So I'm dying to know when that phone call was made, and when the decision was being made to not cooperate, and then to get on a soapbox every single meeting, and then say, how come this investigation's not going anywhere? What's going on? Well, and then making it contentious like we just did. We just made it personal for no reason when, again, 130 citizens signed this. This is not the selectmen. This investigation started before with the prior board. I got to finish. This is what I want to know. How long did it happen? Because for me, we were talking about these things. I'm still stuck on the conduct piece because I really don't like the idea of sitting in a room and having somebody stare down the chair, being asked to be quiet and to leave, and then to have them still sit there staring at the person and still not leave without the idea of the police possibly having to get involved. So it doesn't matter to me whether you get a redacted version, you get the full version. It happened. It is what it is. So I want to know how long. When was that phone call made?
Were you on the prior board, Mr. Weeks?
I was.
Okay.
I also asked, by the way, when he was getting reappointed, do you have any financial disclosures in May? To which there were none. So regardless of whether or not it was filed in July, I asked then. In fact, I was told by the vice chair at the time, this is the first time anyone's ever asked that question. And since that time, I've been the one person that's asked every single time, somebody, do you have any disclosures that we need to know about that haven't been filed yet? Just to kind of speed up the process. In fact, it's been dubbed as just my question that I simply ask. So I want to know, when was that? Nothing else matters to me. When was that phone call made?
So my associate was handling the matter with Mr. Lamke, and he's not here tonight, and I don't have the answer to that question. So I would be happy to have him provide you an email, a phone call, exactly when that discussion was held.
I'm sure we
Well,
could.
we're in the 11th hour right now because we're in the middle of a hearing. What I want to know is, every single time I've been here, I have been, just like now, it's, I can't appease you. You're doing this. All of this is you. First of all, the prior board was asked to do something, and the prior board did nothing. The citizens decided to sign a petition, and then it became contentious about the people that actually started the petition. And then all of a sudden now, it's, no, you guys have a problem with me. There were over 100 people that signed that petition. It went to town meeting. The town meeting voted darn near unanimously to have this happen. The previous board decided to only do it, actually the petition, keep in mind, by the way, because I want to have this, there's no such thing as revisionist history when everything's on tape. What happened is that the warrant said, or the article said, to remove them. We decided to compromise and have a hearing because we wanted to make sure that everybody got a fair shake. And then it was laid on the table that we wanted to do it for only the people that were being investigated. But that's not what the people said. The townspeople, the purest form of government, town meeting, said, we have lost faith in the ZBA, and the Board of Selectmen aren't doing anything about it. So then we did. We decided to have a hearing. And then I'm finding out, because I've said this on tape, again, go find it, I don't know where it is, but many times, I don't know, this investigation is taking way too long. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. I was just as frustrated as everybody that was sitting over here. And then I come to find out, to read in the report, that only one of the ZBA members that was being investigated indiscriminately was not cooperating. And I want to know how long. Because every time we sat here and were being accused of making it personal, I'm finding out afterwards, it could have been over a long time ago, potentially. And I was just in the dark as everybody else. In fact, probably everybody on this side of the table knows a lot more about what was going on in that report than I do, because I had no idea there was no cooperation happening. No one ever disclosed that to me.
We did not find out about that until...
Until the report came out.
No, until
That's when I found out.
roughly the end of September or something.
So we've had people come here, and I've said it publicly, and I'm not going to mention names, but we've had people that were investigated that handled themselves and conducted themselves incredibly well. And I didn't have a dog in this fight. I was just letting the facts go where the facts go. And I still stand by that. I want to see where this lays out. But where I'm seeing right now is that we're being accused of, not filing things appropriately, super gray areas. And I'm asking a single question that I didn't even come in here with asking. You brought it up. The phone call was made, and that's the one piece of evidence that I want. When was the phone call made? Because I want to know how long the lack of cooperation was happening while we were getting publicly accused on video.
Well, I think it goes actually, this
sure
is...
we can look it up.
Page, no, well, I'm sure if we had known in advance that you wanted to know the dates, we could have asked Mr. Lamke, but we couldn't have anticipated that. So on page 3, it says, Kevin Perkins referred any inquiries to his attorney, John Fink, who I assume is Mr. Sims' associate. Mr. Fink was cooperative to a point on behalf of Mr. Perkins. Mr. Fink offered to try to arrange for a meeting with Mr. Perkins, but Mr. Fink advised that Mr. Perkins declined to meet. Thus, this report does not contain responses from Mr. Perkins to the issues involved.
So when?
We don't know, but it does sound like there was a back and forth is my point.
Right, so I want to know how long this has been going on, in which we've been trying to wrap up this investigation. We've been accused of taking too long, that it's somehow our fault that we're holding this up, that somehow it's a witch hunt on our end. When I come to find out when this report is written, that no, it was being held up.
Who was calling you as a board on a witch hunt?
Oh, Mr. Perkins did, in a number of emails to our town administrator.
I'm here tonight
Yep.
just to defend Mr. Perkins and his position, and we're doing the best we can to address every issue. I don't have the information that Mr. Weeks is looking for, because as you read, it was my associate, Mr. Fink, who corresponded directly with Mr. Lamke on whatever dates that was, and again, I'm not 100% convinced that even if Mr. Perkins had been interviewed, the report would have been different in any way, shape, or form. Maybe you have that information. I don't know. But I don't think that the failure of Mr. Perkins to agree to an interview has any substantial impact.
Well, for me, it does, because this is the thing. We're talking about a Section 23, where we're talking about a lack of trust from the people, where they might have a belief that something is awry. And when you have an appointing authority, and there's many different forms, whether it be the moderator with the Finance Committee or the Board of Selectmen appointing to these other various boards and committees. The idea is that there's supposed to be not agreement, you're not supposed to be lockstep in whatever it is going on. It's all about public discourse and everything, and I've let this kind of go and try to see where it's going to fall. But when it comes right down to disrespect, and I would just say a contentious dynamic between the two appointing authority and the appointee board, that's where my issue lies, because it's not doing anything to help the camaraderie between the boards. It's not doing anything to say that what's the holdup, what's going on, when you darn well know what the holdup is and what's going on. I don't like the idea of a lot of this stuff being kind of put out in public as if there's something awry, or there's something going on behind closed doors. When that report came out, the one thing that stuck out to me was very simple. There's tape of constantly being asked and constantly being accused of dragging this out for no reason, and the report simply said there was no cooperation. And just like you say, how can we know what would happen? I would say the exact same thing back to you. How do we know what would have happened? We could have wrapped this up 6 months ago. I've been saying it for 6 months. I wanted this thing wrapped up a long time ago. And I went on record and said, are we dragging good people through the mud right now?
Yeah.
Or are we allowing corruption to continue because we're dragging this along? And I'm going to say it again. That should not have happened. So that's my biggest problem. And it doesn't help with the Section 23 piece from my perspective, because now it's just a matter of perception. And when you're talking about cause, that's the cause. The perception. I want answers.
Okay.
And I've been very fair.
Suggesting that the failure of Mr. Perkins to be interviewed was the sole cause of the extended...
What I'm asking you is, when was the phone call made?
Mr. Weeks.
No, we're going to go back and forth.
Well, can I just suggest that we might be circling the drain a bit on this? And I do understand, and I appreciate your passion. Hold on, I got multiple competing things going on, but I am aware of everybody who wants to talk. So I don't think Mr. Sims has access to that information, so we're not going to get that answer tonight. And I don't think you were suggesting it was the only reason that the investigation was delayed, but we'll never really know. We don't know.
But I'm happy to supply you with that information by Monday. Tomorrow's a legal holiday, but I have Mr. Fink prepare a letter or affidavit, so be it, with all the information as to when the phone calls were made and whatever record of information he has, and supply it to this board if that is so important to you.
Okay,
I'll get that.
thank you. Mr. Hickey wanted to chime in.
Well, I have a question. We have two attorneys in the room. We also have two other members of the zoning board in the room. I'm sorry, an ex-member. But, Mr. Cushing, my question to you and Mr. Buckley would be, with the attorney, that you obviously got the same phone call.
Yes.
Okay, from Attorney Lamke.
Yes, I did.
Do you have any idea when that was? Just a ballpark,
Yes,
Billy.
go ahead.
Let me be very clear with Mr. Lamke. Mr. Lamke contacted me on Father's Day, on Mother's Day. I'm being honest with you.
I apologize for that, really.
The only time he contacted me was on Mother's Day, Father's Day, and then one other time after that, which was on a Saturday or Sunday, and then I would follow him with text messages, but I was very forthcoming with him.
No, but do you remember the time? So you're saying Father's Day month? Okay.
Billy, the first time you were contacted by Attorney Lamke was on Mother's Day, and so that was May.
Yeah.
Sean, any idea when your first phone call might have been, if you got more than one?
He actually didn't contact me by phone first. He contacted me by email.
which you could get that date if we needed.
Do you kind of remember?
So basically, my question to the attorneys is, if it's possible that Mr. Perkins...
Mr. Hickey, hold on. I think
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Buckley's-
It was almost winter, because I remember I was doing a patio at the time in Hanover, and I could probably look at my phone and figure out when that was.
So you're saying maybe
December?
like December-ish, January-ish, like,
I want to say at that time it was December
okay.
Of 21.
of 21.
Yeah, because we're not in
Okay,
22.
so
Yeah.
5 months, Mr. Cushing, after you were contacted, or 5 months before?
No. So I was not contacted for the first time from Mr. Lamke. That's why Mr. Buckley said December. I know that because I remember Mr. Lamke said he had not talked to Mr. Buckley, Mr. Pratty, Mr. Perkins, or Joni Minuti. I was the first one to cooperate with him.
Yeah, he hadn't talked.
And I know I hadn't spoken to him since Mother's Day or Father's Day. That was the first time I talked to him. He left me a message. I have it, I have all the saved. He sent me a text following that. And then I followed up with him. And on both those times he called me on Mother's Day and Father's Day, I responded to him both days.
Okay, all right. So does
So-
that help? Or-
Is it possible with the two attorneys here that these phone calls would be made at...
I'm sorry, is somebody saying something?
I just wanted to clarify, is it May 2022 or May 2021?
This past Mother's Day,
So
this past
2022.
Father's Day.
We did not start the investigation until November of 2021.
Okay, thank you.
So
yeah.
Mr. Buckley was contacted right away, and then 5 months
It took a
later?
while before we actually connected to where he was able to send me questions and I was able to answer them. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's helpful, thank you. Mr. Heel, did you have any questions? Mrs. Ryan?
I can only speak to what I saw at 2 meetings, and I saw the disrespectful behavior. And my only other comment is innocent people cooperate. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Innocent people presumed innocent, right?
Mr. Cushing, is it on point
Statement.
to...
I was going to ask Ann to follow. So Ann, is your presumption that I was innocent?
We got to...
hearing is over.
Yeah,
You quit.
I know, but Mr. Cushing...
I have to-
I'm sorry, guys, okay. Yeah, let's try to stick to the subject. This is a hearing about Mr. Perkins, so we're talking about the things having to do with Mr. Perkins. Certainly, you can take that
I
offline.
understand the hearing, that's all.
I understand.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Only where, Ian said that it's, from basically watching Mr. Perkins' behavior. I'm looking at it the other way, that I don't think 1 and 2 happen. And
What does that mean?
with full disclosure, I knew Kevin when he was 8 years old. I coached him when he was 10. I haven't seen him in 20 years. But I'm a little bit of a hothead, we'll say, where, come out, shoot first, ask questions later. If 3 and 4, 1 and 2 don't happen, if 3 and 4 is done properly. The investigation, well, Kevin's being accused of 4 different things here.
Well, I didn't know what you were talking about, 1 and 2.
So
Okay.
if the investigation was done properly, or maybe Mr. Perkins didn't come to a meeting and had a private conversation upstairs, then 1 and 2 definitely don't happen. But they
did
happen
happen.
because
They happened.
it took so long. Like to Joe's question
You know what,
with
Mr.
the
Hickey,
phone
then I
call.
would say, why didn't we not see the same conduct from the other members of the ZBA?
I can't
Not one other member
say that.
conducted
Everybody
themselves
else
that
was
way.
respectful.
Not one other member.
Okay. I mean, to me, this is a lot like what happened to the Recreation Commission 7 years ago. It's a witch hunt,
okay,
a wild goose
let's
chase.
stick-
You're trying to take good people down because he didn't have possibly didn't have a disclosure with
Mr. Hickey,
Mr. Johnson.
I want to remind you, we were doing what the town meeting voted to do. You
Correct.
voted to do this
Absolutely,
investigation.
I did.
Okay.
And I'd like to see where Mr. Johnson is.
Yeah.
And why isn't Mr. Lamke here if we were going to go through this tonight.
There was no need to have Mr. Lamke. We had our town council come and...
But town council can't answer Mr. Weeks' question of when the phone call was
I mean, that's
made.
one question. I don't think it's, I know it's important to you, but I'm sorry. I don't think it's like,
Okay. I'm just, Ann gave her opinion, and it's mostly
It's
because
just an
of
opinion.
the
Well, that's all we have
two
is our
meetings.
opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's all we
making
have.
my opinion
Okay.
that 1 and 2 don't happen if 3 and 4 are done in the proper way, in the proper time.
Okay. And Mr. Hill, you have nothing that you wanted to say?
Well, on that, I mean, I agree. I mean, like you were saying, you do your best, you fill out the forms, at the time, you might, you're not a lawyer, you do it your way. My problem is with 1 and 2. And with the not talking to the investigator, and then the non-disclosure. If you talk to the investigator, we might have been able to come to an answer on that. But to me, I'm really the unprofessional conduct that was directed towards the board and basically to the town. To the board is the town. That is totally unacceptable to me, and I would assume to everybody else in the town. So, yeah, I want to clean up and make sure 3 and 4 don't happen again in the future with anybody. We need to make sure these type of things happen. But my issue is definitely the unprofessional conduct that I've seen since I've been on the board. I'm one of the newer members on the board. I wasn't involved in the original part of it, but I was, here when people were asking what's taking so long, and now we are hearing that at least part of it could be, we don't know, could be because of non-cooperation. So that's all I got.
Ms. Friedman, anything that you feel that we should be addressing that we haven't addressed? I don't know.
Madam Chair, I just have one question regarding the disclosure that was filed, which is July 1st, 2021.
Right.
Was that, perhaps Mr. Sims could answer this, was this disclosure filed prior to Mr. Perkins doing work for Mr. Cushing?
Talking about this disclosure that I presented earlier?
The July 1st, it was after. It was after.
He did work after?
No, that was filed after he did the work.
Okay. Because it doesn't mention that he did work.
That's why I said, although it's a disclosure, it really wasn't a disclosure of the facts. That's what I was trying to articulate.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question, so I have disclosure. What exactly is the issue?
My question was, when this disclosure was filed
In July.
in July,
2021, yeah.
had Mr. Perkins already done work for Mr. Cushing? Because when it says explain your relationship or affiliation to the person, it doesn't indicate that he had previously done work for him. It indicates working relationship in relation to serving on the appeals board, not a personal relationship. So it doesn't indicate a prior working relationship. That was my question.
So I think this was filed at a time in advance of the potential hearing that he'd be sitting on, correct? So other than that, I don't understand what the issue would be. When it became a relevant issue? It's relevant if there's a case before him as a sitting ZBA member, and he discloses in advance, by the way, I know this case is coming in front of me, and this is what I got.
What was the purpose of this disclosure? That he serves on the Board of Appeals with him? Everyone serves on the Board of Appeals with him.
I'm not going to comment on the quality of the disclosure.
Okay.
The fact that he made the disclosure, I think, is sufficient. That he's, again, as
But is it because...
and so many people here, okay, They're not attorneys, they're not skilled in filing, disclosures and how much detail and what should be included, what shouldn't be included, but he filed what he thought was appropriate, and that's what he did. And it's there, it's not a failure to file anything, it's a disclosure. You can talk about its inadequacy as much as you want, but it's a disclosure. And if anybody reviewed this disclosure in advance or during, hearings because it became contentious, then they could say, Mr. Perkins, we'd like you to redefine or exemplify what your relationship was. The State Ethics Commission had no issue with it. They filed a letter saying, no problem.
We have no idea what that related to because Mr. Perkins never gave us, and this is a perfect case of if he had cooperated with the investigator, we never knew what the charges were that were brought against him. He told us that he got a clean letter of health from the state ethics, but we had no background on what the actual accusations were.
Okay, well, I'm surprised that this board did not get involved with that because, I'm talking about the appointing authority here, and this is the letter that I have addressed to Mr. Perkins from Special Investigator Brian McWilliams.
No, we have the letter saying that he was cleared. Yeah. What we don't have is what he was accused of. So a letter saying you're cleared and you have a clean bill of health is completely meaningless.
The letter says, as you know, we were reviewing a concern regarding your participation in matters involving another board member with whom you have a private business relationship. That's what it was about.
Well, how do we know who that person was?
Well, I think...
no, I mean, that's...
we've been talking about this all night.
It's patently absurd. It could have been Mr. Buckley. It could have been Mr. Pridey. I mean, right. That's so general that how would we know who that was about?
You're right. I'm sorry that Mr. McWilliams did not specify in his letter who it was, but I think we all know, we can read between the lines what this is about. And if that's not sufficient for you, I apologize, but it is what it is. Okay, that's what we got. We felt comfortable with it, with Mr. Perkins moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes.
So I did speak to Mr. McWilliams. He was talking about me and an interest I may have in a piece of property that was coming from the ZBA. And the complaint was filed by Christine Cohen. I think we're all aware of that. I'm just saying.
No, we're not going to mention other people's names. We're going to stick to what we're here to talk about.
It's in the investigation document. Anybody reads it, it's online, it's posted. I'm not giving you information that's not available to the public. Christine Cohen filed the complaint.
As far as I know, ethics does not disclose who files a conflict of interest complaint.
I haven't, all the complaints, Ms. Kimmett, in here, like I said before.
So I just want to understand, Mr. Cushing, are you telling me that the State Ethics Commission told you who filed that complaint?
Ms. Kimmett, I am not saying that the State Ethics Commission told me that she filed the complaint, but sister, husband put together the petition.
Okay. So we have, okay.
2 + 2 does equal 4, right?
Okay. I think you've made your point, Mr. Cushing, and I've given you way more latitude as usual. Is there anything else that, Mr. Sims, did you have any closing statement or?
I just had a couple questions that I think should be addressed. I'm informed that both yourself and Mr. Weeks are the subject of a complaint filed by Mr. Perkins. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of anything.
No.
News to me.
There's a letter in there that Ms. Kevin acknowledges that his name in. She's not aware of that.
But has this got anything to do with what we're talking about tonight?
It certainly does, because we're talking about conflict of interest all night long here. And
this is an email to the town administrator from Ms. Kevin. If you read down towards the bottom, one of the items she requests.
I'm sorry, is this something that we've seen?
I would hope so. It was August 20th, 2021. From Laura Kemet to Lisa Green on an FOIA request. Copy of the complaint filed about me by Mr. Perkins and any response to him by our office or our chair relative to the complaint is the last, and regards Laura. So I'm assuming, and if you want to see it, I can bring it.
Okay, so I asked for information about a complaint that was filed about me.
Okay, my only concern is that you and Mr. Weeks feel comfortable sitting in judgment of Mr. Perkins knowing that a complaint was filed against you, and you don't feel any conflict of interest.
Point of order.
Not at all. And just a reminder, I'm not the subject of tonight's hearing.
Understood.
So I have absolutely
no comfort here.
I would have disclosed.
Wait, so for me, how am I getting involved in this? My name wasn't even mentioned in there.
The complaint was,
I also have another letter saying that somehow I...
included in the complaint by Mr. Perkins.
That's fine. I have another letter from Mr. Perkins saying that I seem to have come around, so he really hopes I talk to all the other board members and see if I can get him on my side. So I can forward it to you. I mean, I forwarded it to town administrator.
I had a simple question. I wanted to make sure that both Mr. Weeks and Ms. Cheryl Kemet were totally comfortable sitting on this case, knowing a complaint was filed by Mr. Perkins against them.
I'm completely comfortable. I have no financial interests. I have no conflicts of interest. And if I had, I would have filed the 23B or whatever the appropriate disclosure should have been.
I'm curious where my complaint is.
Okay, so with that, we will move to the vote. I will entertain a motion.
Do you have any last minute things?
No.
I see you staring at me.
From the vote, then, my question was, if you're comfortable and if not, you should recuse. And if you don't recuse and you vote, then...
What I'd like to know is you mentioned a complaint against me, but everything you just read was about Laura. I'm curious.
I don't have the other one in front of me.
That was just acknowledgement from Laura that she was aware of the complaint. I'm not sure you were aware of the complaint, but there was a complaint filed well over a year ago before the ZBA investigation onset. The complaint filed when Matt Dyer was chair. It was filed with your office and with the clerk.
And it was filed because Yes, and I'll tell you what the nature of that filing was that I don't like Mr. Perkins and I didn't appoint him, and I kept voting against appointing him. And you know what? I don't need to like somebody. I don't need to appoint somebody. I've told Mr. Perkins multiple times, although he doesn't believe this, I don't know him. I have no personal relationship with him. My children have never known him. We've never done business together. I just felt that based on a lot of the things that I was being told over a course of several years, that I did not feel comfortable endorsing Mr. Perkins to be appointed to the board. And I was consistent with that once these allegations were brought to my attention. That is my job and my responsibility as an elected official to try to do what I think is in the best interest of the town. So do I feel comfortable? I feel 100% comfortable, and I absolutely don't feel that I need to recuse myself. I know that I'm able to do what is in the best interest of the town.
Madam Chair, out of respect to my concerns of you and Mr. Weeks not having the ability to be impartial, could I formally request that you two recuse from voting on this matter?
I am not going to recuse myself. Attorney Friedman?
It doesn't seem like there's a conflict of interest here. I'm sure many people complain about actions that the Board of Selectmen...
But he's the subject of the vote.
So, can I just once again reiterate the fact that you brought me into this conversation? That all I did was ask you, when was that phone call made? You referenced a complaint to me to try to dissuade or take some credibility away from me being able to be impartial, even though I've been on record many times saying, where is the complaint now? That's two pieces of data that you've brought up that I want to see now. I want to know when the phone call was made, and I want to find the complaint right now. If you're good enough to bring it up, you have it.
The complaint if you want to read it.
That's addressed to me.
The Facebook group Investigate the Zoning Board of Appeals, were you a member of that?
Point of order.
Yeah.
No, it's a legitimate question. I want to answer it.
Yeah.
You were a member of that.
Excuse me.
So you were a member of that.
Excuse me. I am... Don't make me gavel this in, Mr. Perkins, okay? I am the chair, and I am the one who... Questions need to come through me, and that's the way that it needs to work. Now, Mr. Weeks, I understand that you are concerned that allegations made. I totally understand what you're saying. Why are we pursuing this line of questioning?
Why? Because I want to know if someone's going to say they have a complaint against me. I want to know. By the way, my Facebook's been deleted since April, so I don't know what to tell you.
But you are a member of this group
100%.
that says investigate the ZBA, right?
No.
You were.
I was a year ago.
Excuse me, but how...
Wait, what does that have to do with anything?
We're talking about...
Does somebody not...
Where is the complaint?
complaint made to?
You've seen it, you know.
So the complaint was
Not about Mr. Weeks, I've not...
July of 2021 to Mr. Dyer, copy to Attorney Green, and I have a copy of the actual email sent by Mr. Perkins to formally, July 1st of 2021.
Was that ever provided to you?
Off the top of my head, no.
And I would never have seen that. I wasn't copied on it. How would I know about that?
Well, I would assume that counsel or Ms. Green would have shared that with you, maybe Mr. Dyer at that point in time.
Acknowledgement of the complaint.
So this was
confused.
This
July, are we talking
About Mr. Weeks?
July of this year? Talking last year.
This was the acknowledgement email.
I'm not saying I don't know about mine. I'm saying I don't know anything about Mr. Weeks.
Well, he was in.
I referenced.
So to answer your question, I am absolutely unbiased because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, all right. So I think we're all set. We're ready to go to the vote. I will entertain a motion. And just to be clear, we're here to decide if Mr. Perkins will continue to remain on the Zoning Board of Appeals or not.
I make a motion to remove Mr. Perkins from the zoning board of appeals.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right, thank you. And we will...
You have to say opposed.
Pardon?
Opposed.
You have to say.
Opposed, I'm sorry, Mr. Hickey. Okay, and nobody's abstaining. Okay. So that matter has been disposed of, and we're moving on to Mr. Buckley. I don't know if people want to take a brief recess, or if we want to just, it's up to you, Mr. Buckley. Okay, all right. All right. Mr. Buckley, you're here, I'm just going to read from the letter that we sent to you. You're here for failure to disclose, and then Attorney James Lamke was hired by the Select Board to conduct an investigation of the zoning with a focus of conflict of interest, and the report concludes you failed to file disclosures pursuant to 268A, Section 23. And I think, was there anything that you want? I know you had sent an email to Ms. Green, and I'm not sure, did you want to mention, I know you've had a couple of conversations with Mr. Buckley, and there were some emails, and I didn't know if you might want to kind of bring the board up to speed. Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
This is the one from November 1st?
The one that I had sent was my response to the investigation. I mean, I have no problem with any of them being read. So.
Well, I mean, if you want to, even if we don't read it, if you just want to tell us what you're...
Well, I mean, I think it's...
I know you had...
That's being read the way I intended it, so I think it would be best...
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, all right. What?
So I'm comfortable with him reading if he has it.
Oh, if you have it, you can read it
I'm sure I
to us.
can find it in my emails.
Okay.
I have the November 1st, and there's November 7th.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
Doesn't matter who reads it.
It doesn't matter to me who...
Ms. Green, if you could...
So this is from Sean Buckley, dated Tuesday, November 1st, 2022 at 9:27 a.m. It's to myself, Lisa Green, regarding the investigative report. Hello, Lisa. I respectfully request that this response be accepted as a formal response to the investigation report, to be included as an addendum to the investigation report, and distributed immediately to all Select Board members accordingly. Please forward this to the Selectmen and request that it is read into the record, as I think it would be relevant to tonight's meeting, meaning when it was originally scheduled for November 1st. To whom it may concern, I have thoroughly reviewed the investigative report prepared by Mr. Lamke. While I appreciate the effort to put forth a thorough investigation, I feel that some very obvious, important, simple facts were overlooked and misinterpreted, whether purposeful or not. Also, I'd like to point out that the summary, report, and conclusion offer no explanation into the findings pertaining to me.
First, the summary states that Sean Buckley appears to have had disclosure issues under the COIL arising out of the matters examined. Further, on page 9 of the investigation, it states, in reference to Mr. Buckley, no documents were provided by the town or discovered by which he, his immediate family, or a related business relationship specified in section 19 had any possibly problematic matter before the ZBA. Although nothing was found that pertained to me with Section 19, Mr. Lamke still states that I appeared to have had disclosure issues. Please note that although he implies I may have appeared to have disclosure issues, he never gives a single example of an instance where I should have filed a disclosure. He alludes to a couple of things. They tend to pertain to Section 23, which is very arbitrary and which Mr. Lamke himself states there is no litmus test for. Also note that the one time that I did have something relevant coming before me on the ZBA, in which a disclosure needed to be filed by me, I had done so when it was indeed warranted. I would also note that I abstained from voting on that particular project, Cushing Trails. Unfortunately, though, Mr. Lamke provides no particular instance, yet still alluding to the idea that disclosures still possibly should have been filed. It seems unfair for him to do so while giving no insight into any other instance in which I could or should have. Yet he continues to perpetuate an underlying perception that under Section 23, maybe I should have, which brings me to some facts that were never clarified. In particular, the allegation that Kevin Perkins grew up with Mr. Cushing and I. It seems astonishing that he spent this much time on the investigation, and yet a 5-minute Google search reveals relevant facts. There is a significant age difference between Mr. Perkins and I, making it unreasonable to assume that we were in school together. Mr. Perkins appears to have attended South Shore Regional Vocational Technical High School. Mr. Perkins appears to have grown up at 103 Indian Head Street, while I grew up on Lakeside Road. It seems almost purposeful that not be able to figure out the point and point out those obvious facts while still alluding to it in the context of this investigation. To assume and leave open to interpretation that there is an established relationship of any sort outside of ZBA meetings is absurd. So, if it is not clear yet, then may it be clear now that Kevin Perkins and myself have never at any point had any social relationship and only know each other strictly through the ZBA. There is also reference to William Cushing and myself living at 236 Lakeside Road at the same time. Even though, as pointed out, that wouldn't even matter. This is absolutely false. I have not ever lived at 236 Lakeside Road at the same time as William Cushing. In conclusion, Mr. Lamke stated, based on the facts and evidence, it would appear that Mr. Perkins, Mr. Buckley, and Mr. Cushing failed to file the necessary disclosures under Section 23 as described above. Yet, there are no facts, evidence, or even a particular instance where Mr. Lamke shows that I should or could have. It seems quite contradictory that I respectfully ask that these matters are clearly seen as such. Thank you, Sean Buckley, ZBA Alternative.
And I must admit, Mr. Buckley, I didn't realize it was that long, but you know, nevertheless, that was good that you had put that in writing. Did anybody have any, did you have any other statements that you wanted to make before we just...
Unfortunately, we didn't know if it was that long since I had asked for it to be distributed to you.
I did see it, I just didn't recollect that it was that long. Yeah, I did see it. We've had quite a bit of material to review relevant to this.
Madam Chair, if I may, so there is a disclosure in here. It is Exhibit F4 from Sean Buckley. It is separated by a thick gray page, but there is a disclosure in here where Mr. Buckley, it 2nd, 2021. And it does state, let's see, from the second to the bottom box, that...
Oh, you have it, okay.
Keep going.
So, no, we're just digressing here.
It does say, I sit on the same governing board as another member of the board who has a possible financial interest in the application for a comprehensive permit coming before the board. I am also a relative of said board member, although I am not an immediate relative. So that he does state that on this particular disclosure.
And Mr. Buckley, you are saying that you did not participate in any of the deliberations regarding Mr. Cushing's project?
On the ZBA?
Yeah. Did you vote on any matters having to do with this project?
No.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay. Did anybody have any other questions?
Definitely participate in the deliberations. Because the way I take that is I sat on the board while it was going through the 40B process.
Sure,
right?
yeah, right.
So,
But
I actually didn't have much to say during that whole process anyways.
Well, it's quite a bit to take in. So I think, so I guess, did you participate in, other than, asking questions of the experts, which anybody would have done, because you have to keep up to speed. Did you take any votes while you were on the ZBA about the Cushing Trails project? Okay. Okay. Did anybody have any other questions for Mr. Buckley?
That was my...
Did you have anything else you wanted to say to us?
No.
Okay. All right. Then we, once again, our decision is, should Mr. Buckley remain as a member of the ZBA or not? I will entertain a motion.
Well, I think we got to go through the process and see if anyone...
Oh, did anybody have any comments? If you can state your name, and even though...
Christine Cohen,
Yep.
23 Spring Street. Did Mr. Buckley or Mr. Cushing alert the board of their relationship prior to being appointed on the same board?
Not that I'm aware of. No, they didn't. But if you look at the report, even the investigator indicates that there's certain relationships that you must disclose, so husband, wife, brother, sister, mother, father, those types of things. The cousin relationship, even the investigator said was...
Even though he was living with the aunt and uncle? They were living...
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but Lampke, the investigator, says that really wasn't pertinent, and as Mr. Buckley said, he did not ever live there at the same time, but even if they had, I don't know that materially changed the relationship. Ms. Friedman, is there anything else that you wanted to add on that point?
I think that the report, Mr. Lemke indicated that there should have been a disclosure because they were relatives.
But Mr. Buckley did disclose, so that was the thing that I found a little bit strange, was that he has it as an exhibit, and Mr. Buckley does disclose what his relationship is, and then takes the additional step of recusing himself from, or not actively, thank you, Mr. Buckley, not actively voting on the project, so I
think there were some other projects.
Actually, can I make a comment on that also?
Please, yeah.
If you'd like to know my reasoning behind even sitting there and not sitting out completely, right, is because I think the public in general doesn't really understand the way the proceedings go as far as how sometimes people can get a constructive approval, right?
Yeah, please explain that.
So, I wanted to make sure I sat on the board because, we have other members of the board that are elderly or whatever, and there's only a certain amount of people on the board. One of them had already recused. You only have a certain amount of members left. There's one of them that's older and her husband has health problems and she may or may not be there all the time. As much as it would have been uncomfortable, it wouldn't have been uncomfortable for me. Like, I had no problem with having voting on it. I think that I can be impartial, but it was uncomfortable for me having a business in town and giving anyone the perception that I'm voting on that. And I would have rather not have. But for the sake of the town, I would have sat there and voted on it for the reason that if I hadn't, and a constructive approval goes through, and then it goes through with no conditions. And that's not good. That's not what we want.
Right.
So I just wanted to make note of that, and why I even sat there through the whole process at all.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. That's helpful.
I think there was another project of Mr. Cushing's, 322 on Posset Street, that Mr. Buckley voted on.
That was the one that was Elizabeth Brown, and I had no idea that it had anything to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, that was a simple raise and rebuild, by the way, which, like, you could put that in front of any ZBA, or even in some towns, it just goes right to the building inspector.
It's
just,
okay.
You know what I mean?
It's kind of a rubber stamp type
Yeah,
of thing.
it's a rubber stamp. So it's like, I can understand if that was even a questionable one, but it's like, yeah, but I didn't even have any knowledge that that was him.
So
You didn't have any knowledge it was who? I'm sorry.
that it was Mr.
Coming in
Cushing.
front of me.
Yeah.
I had no, we don't discuss stuff
Yeah.
about what he's doing, like, so, you know, when that came in front of me, I had no idea it was him, that's all.
Okay.
Mr. Cushing.
When he says him,
That he has a financial interest.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a financial interest.
Yes.
So beyond that, Elizabeth A. Brown didn't become a big thing here, right, until the comprehensive permit came into effect, and that's when everybody started linking Elizabeth A. Brown. But remember, this was preceding the comprehensive permit.
Right.
So, you know, I don't tell people my business or what my interests are, what they aren't, because I don't think it's relative.
Understandable. I guess my question to you, Mr. Buckley, would be prospectively, if you are to remain on the ZBA, would we be able to have you be a bit more diligent about making sure that you're not voting on matters that have anything to do with the financial interest of your cousin?
Well, I kind of take exception to that question because I feel like I was as diligent as...
Oh, I didn't mean to suggest you weren't diligent. You definitely were. You filled out the disclosure. I guess what I'm trying to say was, how could we make sure that we didn't have a repeat of that situation where you did not know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Unless I have the information, I can't make a disclosure on that if I don't know.
Okay, I mean, we did change our bylaw to require that there be more transparency in the applications, and so that we know who, the trustees are, who the financial, but I mean, company names change, people reorganize, all that good stuff. I guess I would just, want to know that you would continue to try to be as diligent as you could. I know you can't be a fortune teller. You can't, and I'm not suggesting you guys need to open up a dialogue about, Mr. Cushing's, business, but I would just want to make sure, because once again, we get back to that 23B, right, where it may not actually be a conflict, but if an average person would say, well, it's his cousin's project, of course he's going to vote yes on it. And we really want to try to avoid any perception that we've appointed people that might do that, so I guess I'm just asking.
And I understand that. And luckily for me in that instance, it happened to be a very simple raise and rebuild.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand it, and in any circumstance that's going to come before me where I feel like there's going to be a conflict, I'm going to file something.
Okay, all right. We appreciate that answer. Anything else? Ms. Friedman? Okay. Did anybody have any other comments or questions? Mr. Heel, did you have any thoughts or comments? Okay. Mrs. Ray, Mr. Hickey. Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion that no action be taken against Sean Buckley.
I second that.
Do we need to say that he will remain or no action? What's the proper motion to take? If we want him to be continued.
Considering whether to remove or not remove.
Right, so the motion should be, I make a motion not to remove Mr. Buckley.
So I'll amend that. So I will make a motion that we do not remove Sean Buckley from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second it.
And, okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we thank you, and I acknowledge this has been a painful process for everybody. And I apologize that it took that long. There really wasn't much we could do about it, but I do apologize that it took that long, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Thank you.